Trigger warning. Think for yourself. Question authority. Say what you think. Speak the damn truth. Hello, welcome to Your2Dads. I'm co-host Daryl, along with my other co-host Joe, and today we have a special guest, Bill Muckler. Bill Muckler is a graduate of University of Missouri with a degree in business management. And after many years in the military service, he has achieved the rank of permanent captain. He is a former CEO and current business manager, managing director at Intheloop Consultants. He is also author of his book, 2020, A Clear Vision for America, and he has a new book coming out, 2020, A Clear Vision for Our Future. You can find his book on Amazon and his website, 2020americabook.com. He has many good offers on his website. You can also read his blog and receive his newsletter as well. He is also a show host at tlbtv.com. You can search the YouTube channel, TLB Project. Now, Bill, welcome to our show. I'm glad to have you here. Me and Joe have a copy of your book. We've been reading through it, and I think it's very well written, very unique perspective of having the individuals in a car traveling around doing business and having conversation style. I think that's kind of neat. That's makes it easy to read, and you have your chapter breakdowns going over the PowerPoints, and I really like that. So, first off, what brought you to our show? Because we were pleasantly surprised to have you around.
Okay, and what got me started on this, and actually it started about 30 years ago. I've always been a person who was interested in how things work, and and I keep looking at the federal government, and I'm thinking that doesn't work well. And as a consultant, I could go into a company and we could work with them, and we could find out what their problems were, and we could solve them. So I became like a problem solver. And I keep thinking, well, the federal government, why isn't anybody solving their problems? And I came to realize, I guess they really don't have the expertise or the competency or whatever. So I started formulating all these ideas in my head, and I would talk to guys, like when I was working on the road. We'd be riding in the car, and we'd be talking about everything: politics, music, movies, sports, whatever. And everybody'd say, "You need to write this stuff down." So that's how I got the idea that, well, if I write it down, I should write it down like a book for myself. And then my son and some others said, "Hey, you ought to make a book and publish it." So that's really how I kind of got started in writing, because I didn't think I could ever write anything. I almost flunked English at Mizzou, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, it's a good read, and like I was saying, it's very easy, and I really appreciate the way you break it down at the end of each chapter with like the PowerPoints. Like, these are the problems and these are the solutions, and then each chapter is kind of it's its own book on itself, pretty much. And I find it very informative for a lot of people, because I've always said you can't ever fix a problem if you don't know what it is. So I think it does a good job in identifying what the current problem is, and then it lays out possible solutions and how to fix it.
Yeah, actually, Daryl, what I did is when you work in business, like I worked in a lot of heavy industry, like coal mines, above ground and below ground, and I've worked in power plants, U.S. Steel, just about everybody you can imagine that was heavy industry. And what we would do is we would first try and learn the history and the background of the operation and the company, and learn the culture of it and so forth. And then what we would do is we would do cost-benefit analysis. We do a root cause analysis, and we look at statistical analysis. We look at every aspect of it. And so I thought, well, I can apply that to the federal government, and I can say, hey, Department of Education, for example, when did it start? Well, it started in 1979. And what was why did we get it started? And what was the background behind it?
Mhm.
And what was it supposed to look like? And then and I lived through this because I remember, I'm old enough to
Mhm.
remember when all this happened. And I'm thinking that was supposed to be an agency with about 4 or 5 thousand people and a budget of around $4 or $5 billion, and
Mhm.
now they got 60,000 people, and we've got a budget of around $60 billion,
Wow. Yeah.
and our test scores have gone from #1 in the world to like 29 in the world. So
Mhm.
that's not working.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Now, Joe, I know you had a couple of questions for Bill, so I mean, I have one doozy lined up for you, Bill, but I'll let Joe go ahead, fire away.
Oh, geez. I wanted to talk about the general the perception of things getting worse per generation. I'm in my early 40s. Daryl's almost there, and it seems like things are getting worse as we go along, getting away from the basic concepts of what this country was founded on, and it's leaning towards this entitlement. Kind of like with the popularity of the Bernie Sanders thing, where why don't I have this? Why don't I have this? And is this something that I only have the view of maybe one generation, but
The government will take care of everything for us, and with the almighty central government, they'll make sure we all get the same amount of wages, and we'll all have the same amount of good stuff, and everything will be great, and we'll live our lives happily ever after.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, that's not the way it works, because what
Right.
that does is it kills the American spirit. And when I read the Declaration of Independence, I think that our founders not only declared independence, but they declared the American spirit.
Mhm.
Yeah. Now I have to jump in here and say for our viewers, we had a little technical difficulty there. Joe was basically asking with the Joe. I'll let Joe go ahead and restate your question there because we got the answer. We got most of Bill's
Okay,
answer.
so the question was my perception of are things getting worse per generation as far as entitlement
Mhm.
beliefs and people wanting socialism to be the answer, government providing you from cradle to grave, and
Right.
versus is it getting worse gradually, or is it just that our view of that's kids these days?
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely right. We have a generation of, it's kind of different from the old Kennedy speech of ask not what your government can do for you, but or your country can do for you, but what can you do for your country? It's completely reversed now, and now it's going back to well, what can the government provide for me? And I think that goes back to the whole welfare state that LBJ brought in back in the 70s. Because an interesting stat here, back in 1965, 24% of blacks and 3.1% of whites were born to single mothers out of wedlock. And you look at that to the 1990s, you're talking 18% of whites were born out of wedlock and 64%. So you're looking at a multi-fold increase in the amount of children born without a father in a home. Now, part of our show is Your2Dads is we stress the importance of having a strong father figure in the home. I think that's beyond proven that a strong male role model is helpful to the mental stability of a developing child, especially through the teenage years, and then that directly impacts how they are as an adult. I think there's a lot of single parent household children raised by mothers who lack that sturdiness that a stable father would give, and so they go off into college. They start complaining about things where if the father is there, they'd say, what are you complaining about? Get to work. But now you have adults who are pro big government because they want the government to step in into that vacancy left by the absent father.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. In fact, one of the things that I watched one of your videos, and that's how I learned about both of you. And I saw it's your two dads, and I thought, hey, I'm a dad,
Yeah.
and I contacted you and said, hey, maybe I could be on your show. So I'm really honored that you asked me on. But you're right about that. In 1965, when Johnson instituted the Great Society, and what happened was, and I lived in St. Louis at the time, we saw the erection of these huge project buildings, project housing, and we saw the blacks, all moving into them, and I thought, that's not going to work. But I can go back a little bit further than that. I can remember in growing up in St. Louis, there was the word African American was never mentioned. That was not even in the vocabulary. We were all just Americans.
Right.
And so that really started dividing us as a country. And so, many of the, you talk about, for example, the black population, which is, I guess, a way to address this is my dad had a typesetting company, and so one of his clients was a St. Louis American newspaper. It was a black newspaper. It was published every Friday, and so he did the typesetting for this company, for the paper, and he would bring the galleys home, and I would be the copy boy, and I'd sit there and we'd proofread the newspaper together, so I knew what was going on. And in the newspaper, there was a lot of advertising in there, and it was all black entrepreneurs. The blacks were really excellent entrepreneurs, and they had all their own businesses. And what would happen was if they were a little short on cash, they couldn't pay for their advertising, so they would it was, let's say it was an appliance store. They would pay Mr. Sweets, who was the publisher, a TV, and then we got the TV. So we were the first people in our neighborhood to actually have a TV set, and we got that as payment through black entrepreneurs who, everybody in business, you have some cash problems every now and then. And so we were always the first ones to get just about everything, and that's the way we got it. It's not that way anymore. And it's sad that we've gone that route, but to me, you have to have a father and a mother figure in the family. Otherwise, the kids are missing out on something, that the family isn't whole. And the idea of what you brought up, Daryl, about the federal government stepping in and being the father figure, that just doesn't work, because nothing in our government really works very well.
Right.
I was going to jump in and say, the work it takes, take away fathers or mothers, just having one parent trying to do all that is, does enough damage as far as attention and everything goes. But, that's what concerns me. You get public schools, and they spend, the early portion of their life trying to kind of conform to a female-based approval system.
Right.
That is kind of weakening, quote, men being men.
Yeah, the phone and texting and so I keep talking to them and saying, hey, you got to really develop your social skills. I don't tell them that exactly, but we get the message across that way. And what's happening is, like, I did a lot of things with my dad, who really worked a lot of hours, in his business and everything, but still I learned how to do things, and he was an example for me. And I saw that, hard work is one of the things that helps you get ahead. And then we started in the 60s and 70s. It was like, oh no, you don't want to work hard, you want to work smart, And I thought, there's got to be a balance between all that. You have to work smart, but you have to work hard too, because I've seen so many people, they think, oh, I'll just get by, I'll slide by, and eventually they fail, and what happens is, and this is what really concerns me today, is we're running up all this debt. Everybody has this insurmountable credit card debt. They have mortgages on their houses. A car loan is 72 months. Hey, when I got my first car, the car payments were 24 months. You know?
Yeah, I think 6 years, 7 years.
Right. Well,
Yeah, that's the thing that gets me about that too. Is when it comes to the debt, the common sense of financial is not taught in high school anymore. You know, they're saying that 70 or 80% of the people can't handle a bill that's $1,000.
Right.
And it's how are they going to retire when my people become retirement age? They haven't been saving. They haven't been planning for it. What's going to happen? You know,
well, what
especially
happens
when
with
Social Security, you can't count on Social Security.
Yeah, well, I know, Bill, you have a lot of points about Social Security and whatnot, but what can we say about personal reliability, personal accountability? Like, I have Social Security, but I'm not going to rely on that to set myself up financially to put my faith in the government that it's going to be there, or even 401k. So my thing is, if I'm going to retire, I can't have a $500 a month car payment. I can't have a $1,500 a month mortgage payment. These things are going to have to be taken care of. And, then you look at that, it's like, okay, well, if you have a nice car, a nice house, it's all paid off. Well, you must be part of the 1%. You must be part of the problem that younger people are looking at is, well, look at the rich people. They don't pay enough taxes when actually they do pay their taxes. But the thing is, if they've paid more taxes throughout their lifetime than a 20-year-old ever could. You're supposed to be, 60, 65, 70 years old and well off financially if you actually did things correctly. If you made a lot of mistakes along the way, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. And that's when those people are going to need Social Security. But then we go back to accountability. I'm sorry if you made mistakes in your life and you need the government to bail you out. Sometimes it is there to help. I know a lot of people who collect Social Security, and that's their only income because they might have a disabled child or they might be disabled themselves, and they might not have even paid too much into it. So there is a part of the government to help those that can't help themselves. I'm talking about more the people who have just made poor choices.
Yeah. And actually, what happens is we now have almost programmed or brainwashed the young kids, and especially the millennials, and I guess you guys are a little bit past the millennial age, in that the government's going to give you free everything. And so we saw the popularity of Bernie Sanders, for example, and what started out to be kind of a backlash against the Democrat Party establishment turned out to be, hey, Bernie's going to give us free education. He's going to give us free stuff. And we're all going to get $15 an hour minimum wage. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, that who's going to pay for all that? That's not going to work. And what's happening today, though, is, and I went to college, so, I can appreciate that, but I kind of worked my way through college, too. My dad paid some of it, and I worked every summer and holidays and that type of thing. But what's happening today is the kids graduate from college, and in a sense, they sign a mortgage when they graduate, which is their student loans. And they're paying student loans for like 30 or more years until they're ready to retire. So,
you're right. Yeah, they can't.
How's that going to work out?
Right, and they can't even declare bankruptcy on that. That's something that you have to pay. There's no way out of that one. And that's what happens when you have government-insured, government-guaranteed loans to students. So colleges are able to jack their rates up exponentially.
So government ran education and free is going to reduce the cost and make it more.
Anytime government gets their hands on anything, the costs go up and the quality goes down.
Exactly. When I went to Mizzou, this was back in the 50s. It cost about $1,000 a year for me to attend college, and that included my frat bills, and my fees and my books and everything, the whole thing. And then what I did is I worked in the summer to make spending money, so I'd have spending money during the year, for beer and pizza and stuff like that,
Right.
dates. And for example, I've done all the jobs Americans won't do. For example, one summer we found out that you could make a lot of money working in Wisconsin. So 5 of us got in a car and we drove up to from Missouri to Markeson, Wisconsin, and we got hired on by the California Packing Company, which was a division of Del Monte, and we got jobs as pea pickers. And we actually lived in barracks with, there were migrant workers there. There was a few other college boys and a lot of homeless guys and guys that were just transient workers. And we lived in like a big barracks, in cots. And then we got up at 5:30 in the morning. We went to the chow hall, and then we loaded up in the back of a big steak truck, and we went out into the fields. And we made 65 cents an hour. That was overtime. But the way we made money was we worked like 12 to 16 hours a day and 7 days a week, because the peas kept growing and they needed to be harvested, right? So
Right.
it got to a point where after I got my 40 hours in, I thought I was a rich guy, because, hey, now I'm making time and a half. I'm making about $1 an hour, and I'm going to have some spending money next year. But how many kids today would go ahead and do something like that? And I know a lot of guys that I went to school with, they went to work for, maybe the local bakery or something like that, and got up at 3 in the morning and, worked in hot, sweaty environments. Covering for, the workers are on vacation. And now, and we didn't I didn't have any college debt. I didn't have any debt at all. In fact, I had around $1,000 saved up by the time I graduated from college. That's not the same today.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point, Bill, that you were making. And it's like, for me as a truck driver, I drive many types of trucks. I started off in the garbage industry, just throwing trash in a garbage truck, and I had to, work really hard to work my way up. And the whole thing of work harder, not smarter. Well, for me, working hard was working smarter, because it got me noticed. It got me the recognition, and my management offered to, I had to pay to take my written test to get a CDL, but they set up everything for my driving test and whatnot, and I got my CDL, and then they, I was trained, and I worked there for a few years driving for them, and I went to another company that was willing to train me to drive another style truck. This time it was front load commercial. And then I went to another company that trained me how to drive a manual and do an industrial roll-off. Now, the company that I work for, I have a lot of younger people who were hired to do one job, which is pick up residential garbage. But they see other drivers do other jobs that they feel is more prestigious and requires more skills and whatnot, and they want the management to cross-train them and provide them with a new career opportunity when they haven't, in my opinion, earned it thoroughly enough to prove to management that they're hard workers, they're honest workers, or they have the knowledge and skill set. So they're relying on a corporation to provide everything that they want with working for one company. And a lot of companies, I don't feel that's up to them. If you want something, I think you should go out there and get it. And if you're in a situation that's not going to offer you the opportunity to get what you want, then go somewhere else. It's a free country.
Well, and I don't think the kids that are teenagers and high school and college graduates today have really learned. You mentioned skills. For example, when I graduated from Mizzou, I was drafted, and in order to beat the draft, I joined the Marine Corps, and I was accepted into the Officers Candidate course. So instead of going to Parris Island or San Diego, I went to Quantico and became a second lieutenant. But that was a tough go, because our boot camp was actually a lot tougher than the Paris Island boot camp was, and a lot of people have no idea about that. But you learned by making sure there was no way I was going to fail, and I don't know if people look at things that way and think, hey, I gotta do this because I don't want to fail. I want to be good at what I'm doing. And then we went to basic officer school, and that was another 9 months. So that was a year in training. Then when I got out into the Fleet Marine Force, I was assigned as an air defense control officer. So I had that as my primary duty. But then I had all sorts of other duties. The CO put me in charge of classified material, and so I was the custodian of our classified material files, and I ended up with a top secret security clearance. Then when the admin officer wasn't there, was on duty or off, I filled in for him, and so I had to learn that job. And then we didn't have an intelligence officer in S2, so I filled in on that and became that officer. So we were multitasking, and we didn't even know what multitasking was in those days. That term wasn't even invented yet. But we learned how to do so many things, and we just took responsibility because we knew, hey, this has to be done. And there was no way that anybody was ever going to get a hold of classified material that I was responsible for. I mean, it just wouldn't happen,
Oh, no.
And so
Right.
those things for me helped me later on in life, because then I realized, there's so many things I could do. I had confidence to do things, and I knew how to do things. I knew how to handle things. If I didn't know how to handle it, I would work at it at night. Like when I first got into consulting, I used to study and read at night, and I'd ask questions of guys and everything, and really try and learn. And it sounds like that's what you all did, is you kept trying to improve your skills so that you could take on more responsibility. And more responsibility means, maybe, like you say, have a more prestigious job. But that's the way people look at the prestigious jobs until you're doing a prestigious job, and then you think, oh boy, I got my work cut out for me,
Right.
don't I?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's interesting. Did you have another question, Daryl? Or
Oh, well, I was just like with the current state, this current trending word of white privilege. With all of we're talking about work ethics and a go-to drive and being aware enough to see, something out there that's better than what we have. So we want to strive to work harder, be better, improve, look in a mirror, reevaluate yourself. Now, I come from a broken home, but I had a stepfather who stepped in and decided that he was going to take on responsibility of at the time he was 24 and my mom was 22, and here I'm a 3-year-old kid, and he stepped in and he was the man of the house, and I learned a lot of good positive role model aspects of work hard, keep your nose to the grindstone, keep working at it, don't worry about other people, worry about yourself. And that's one of the things I've always told my children is never compare yourself to other people. You don't know what they've been through. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday and how can you improve on that. Now, did you get any of those go-to drive, work hard, plug away at it, improve? Were you inspired at all by your father, or is that just a simple case of white privilege?
Hey, line up! Line up! Everybody line up! We're about to race! Everybody line up! Shoulder to shoulder, take off your backpacks. Basketball, line up, we're about to race. Hey, we are racing for a $100 bill. The winner of this race will take this. It's a $100 bill. Before I say go, I'm going to make a couple statements. If those statements apply to you, I want you to take 2 steps forward. If those statements don't apply to you, I want you to stay right where you're at. Take 2 steps forward if both of your parents are still married. Take 2 steps forward if you grew up with a father figure in the home. Take 2 steps forward if you've never had to help mom or dad with the bills.
No, it was my father was my role model, and like I said earlier, I watched him work hard, and I helped him work, and I did stuff at that time. See, when I grew up as a young kid, World War II was going on, and so everybody sacrificed for the nation. We don't sacrifice now. Everything, I'm a Catholic, so I believe in the Holy Trinity of God the Father, Son, Holy Ghost, or Holy Spirit, the way it used to be. The Holy Trinity today for kids is me, myself, and I.
That's a good one.
And so a lot of kids won't even pay attention to their parents, and like you said earlier, there's so many more one-parent families, and it's single moms raising kids, and they're either on welfare, so there's no incentive for anybody to do anything better, or the single mom is working 40 hours a week, and by the time she gets home from work, and they end up, there's no family dinner. It's get something at McDonald's or some fast food outlet or a pizza, and then everybody is just the mom's completely worn out, and the kids are playing the Xbox or PlayStation, or they're on their phones doing. And now I guess everybody does everything on their iPhones. So. The kids don't really have any example. I don't think, and the whole thing is just. I guess what we're saying is, the whole system has just gone completely out of whack to a point where I'm really afraid what's going to happen to our kids and our grandkids is that, saddled with this more than $20 trillion in national debt, and now we're going to increase the debt limit another $1 trillion, and everybody having maxed out their credit cards, and if they have a home, they've got a mortgage payment. If they got a couple of cars, they're making 2 car payments. They're getting further and further in debt, and to me, that, from what I've observed in a lot of people, is that it really splits the families apart. A lot of divorces are caused by money issues.
Yes, that's money issues is one of the key things. And an interesting study, if you were to calculate and add up the world's debt between each individual country, it breaks down to every man, woman, and child on this planet owes $30,000. That pays off the world debt from all the countries added together. So we're definitely doing something wrong here. $30,000 is a lot to expect a newborn child to pay one day into this world, and they're saddled with the average debt load of that much. So, yeah, I definitely agree that but to be in a more positive side of things, I think that getting the truth out there, speaking honestly and openly about what you think, looking around and seeing the problems, we're building a network of people is what I'm seeing. Now we're just starting out on Your2Dads. Bill, you have a good following on the TLB TV network, and there's a lot of people with the technology nowadays that's growing and building a positive movement, I would say. Hopefully that's the case, because there's plenty enough out there that is more left-wing, ideologically possessed, socialism is good, communism is good, and they just have no sense of history. And that's the one thing I'm trying to fight against is, if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it. And I've been studying my history faithfully, and it scares me in that aspect, not just with the debt overload, but the seeking the government to take care of it for you. And then identity politics you mentioned earlier with the birth of political correctness that came around in the 70s and then the 80s and then the 90s, and it disappeared for a while, but now it seems to be back with a vengeance, and people have completely forgotten what identity politics lead to. It leads to Hitler and the Nazis, it leads to Mao and the Cultural Revolution, it leads to Lenin, Marxism. It just leads to, in the 20th century alone, 100 million deaths in the gulags and concentration camps. Individual rights and responsibilities and freedoms has to be at the cornerstone of every American's mind going forward, because that is the American dream. Work hard, be honest, and anything that you want, you can have. And I think we've forgotten that. We expect your dreams to come true because there's a genie with the American flag on it, and you rub it and you get what you want without putting in no work, and that's not how this country was intended to be run. And we're just going out of control.
Okay. One thing I guess I would like to say is, you mentioned something about political correctness. That actually was written in the Communist Manifesto in 1848 by Karl Marx. So this is something that they knew that was a way, if they could curtail people's speech and get people to speak correctly and speak government speak, that's one way they could socialize us, and that way they could take over and so really what that does is it takes away our rights from us, and I don't think that the young kids today understand those rights. But what I wanted to say, and is I really admire and respect what you two, Daryl and Joe, are doing, because what you're trying to do is bring back what I lived through back in when I was a young kid, with the mother and father at home, and having a father figure, and having a dad who showed you how to do things and taught you things, and also gave you a good example. And when that's missing and there's no dad around, it just doesn't work as well. And I'm not saying that some kids don't end up being successful and having great lives and everything if they don't have a dad, but the whole country is gone to a situation where I'm really afraid for what our kids are going to see. Let's say 30 or 50 years from now. I won't be around at that time, but saddled with debt, I think inflation will run its course, and we'll be like Argentina was a little while back. And so, and it really takes a movement, and I'm saying what the Your2Dads is a movement, because in a sense it is, because you guys are starting to do this, and I'm really excited about what you're doing, and wish you all the success in the world.
Thank you very much for that, Bill. Very kind words.
Yep.
Yeah, that's all you could do. That's part of our show. Think for yourself, question authority, say what you think, and speak the damn truth. That's what we try to do here. Because First Amendment is number one. It has to be number one, and people don't have a right to not be offended. You have the right to be offended.
With the backing of the Second Amendment as the insurance policy, it's amazing, speaking off topic a little bit, how we're getting away from the philosophy of self-governance, trying to think of the best way to word this.
Well, let me jump in. One of my tenets when I wrote my book was, what is best for we the people, those of us living in our hometowns and working, and that's a small, limited government that's close to home. In other words, we want a streamlined government that's not a big bureaucracy. We want it limited in power, not over-regulated. We don't want to be over-regulated. And we want to have government that we can talk to here in our local communities, not somebody inside the Beltway. And I think that's what you're trying to get at there.
Yeah, I mean, you watch C-SPAN, you watch just the waste that goes on, the back and forth. They can't get anything done. I kind of wonder if it's done on purpose, getting away from left and right wing. It seems like both sides do that.
Yeah.
It's sustaining their own monster.
Yeah, well, we have issues, like I always say, like if you could get the whole country to agree on two things or a few things, it would be one, let's limit the amount of lobbyists allowed in Congress, or get rid of all of the lobbyists from the government. Let's get rid of gerrymandering laws where you have career politicians. I think a lot of people don't even understand what that means. They think it's some guy named Jerry. No, it's a terrible thing that both sides play on. And let's also put in term limits for congressmen and women. We should follow George Washington's example, and 2 terms, let's step down. That's actually what a republic would be for. When
You mean public service shouldn't make you a millionaire?
No, public service should not make you a millionaire. It should make your people that you represent better. You know, we should all have correct representation, not career politicians that you can never reach, never make contact with. So we have a lot of issues here. I don't know if you could ever fix corruption in a system like ours to be perfect, because I don't agree that there's any such thing as like a utopian world where everything runs perfectly. There's going to be problems, but problems always get worse if you ignore them and you don't identify them and you just want superficial treatments. You can't put a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. You have to go in there, take out the bullet, and take care of it the right way.
Yeah, and in talking about that, many people, you mentioned the Constitution or the amendments. Many people don't even know what's in the Constitution. They've never read it, and they have no idea what it is. And let me give you an example. I talk to a lot of groups, like speaking, and I went up to Jacksonville University about a year or so ago, and they invited me to speak there. Fortunately, you know, nobody knew who I was, so there were no protests out there. But in my talk, I asked the group, and all students in there, and they were all dressed very well, and they seemed to be very on top of things. And I said, can anybody here tell me what the 5 rights that are guaranteed under the First Amendment of the Constitution? And they worked and worked and worked, talking to each other, and they could only come up with 3. And that's what gave me the idea to write my next book, 2020 Clear Vision for Our Future, which I broke into 3 parts, but I still have my characters, talking in dialogue. So my book is written in dialogue form, which I think is easier to read, and it makes it more interesting. And so they discuss the First Amendment, and that chapter is called The Fabulous First. And then they discuss the Second Amendment, that's called the Sacred Second, because if we don't have the second, we don't have any of the rest of them.
Exactly.
Let's face it. You know.
Exactly.
So, and it's amazing. So then I belong to the Military Officers Association, and I go, and they asked me to speak at their luncheon. There's 110 people in the room, and I asked them, what are the 5 rights guaranteed under the First Amendment? And we got admirals and generals and colonels and majors in there, and they can only give me 3. And I'm thinking, oh boy, we really need to get this out there, because if we don't know what our rights are, how can we keep them? How can we protect them?
You don't know what you got till it's gone. Yeah, it's true.
So today, we learned that healthcare is a right, but that's not really a right. It's a dependency, and that's not what our founders declared. They declared independence, not dependence,
right,
on the federal government.
Yes. Well, Bill, do you have anything else, Joe?
I'm good.
Bill,
Thank you.
I think we can close with saying thank you very much for the kind words for me and Joe. That really means a lot for us, just starting out and doing what we think is right. We're definitely going to stay in contact. I think we've got something going strong here, and we'd love to come on your show anytime. And again, Bill's book is 2020, A Clear Vision for America's Future, and you can find his book and his website at 2020americabook.com. You can also find it on Amazon. He's got it in the Kindle version and the hardcover. He also has many good deals on his website as well. And the TLBTV.com. You can find him there.
Yeah, and I'm on all the social media, so and I can even be Googled now. Of course, you can. Google knows just about everything right now, don't they? And so,
That's true. That's true.
Anyway, it's just really, and by the way, if somebody wants my book, if they order it from me, I love to sign books for them and everything, so I do that, and I don't charge anybody mailing or taxes or anything. I pick up that myself. So, but I guess what I wanted to say was it's just really an honor to be on with Your2Dads, and I really love what you guys are doing, and thank you so much, and God bless America.
Thank you.
Thank you.